For 100 years, the same warning traveled farther than light itself, carried in trembling voices across forgotten trade routes, abandoned colonies, and the silent halls of dying civilizations. It was never written into official history. No emperor wanted it recorded. No admiral wanted to admit that entire species had fled not from monsters, not from plague, but from a single emerging civilization at the edge of an ordinary spiral galaxy. Every refugee told the same story, though none of them had lived through the event themselves. They had inherited the warning from survivors before them, each generation passing it on like a sacred commandment. If you find the humans, do not force them into a corner. Those words echoed through ancient spaceports illuminated by flickering neon, across forgotten temples orbiting dead stars, and inside hidden diplomatic stations where nervous ambassadors lowered their voices whenever Earth was mentioned. The galaxy laughed. Surely no young species could inspire such fear. Surely these tales had grown larger with every retelling. After all, humanity possessed no vast empire, no godlike technology, no fleets that darkened entire sectors. They were simply another ambitious civilization climbing toward the stars. Or so everyone believed. The Varkal Empire believed it more than anyone. Stretching across nearly a third of the known galaxy, the Empire had conquered thousands of inhabited worlds without ever suffering a true defeat. Their colossal dreadnoughts blotted out suns. Their soldiers wore living armor that adapted to every battlefield. Entire civilizations surrendered at the mere sight of the imperial crest burning across their skies. To the Varkal, fear was just another weapon, polished through centuries of absolute dominance. When scattered diplomats nervously repeated the ancient warnings about humanity, the imperial court erupted in laughter. Massive crystal chandeliers hanging from the vaulted throne chamber shimmered as hundreds of nobles mocked the frightened refugees. Some called humans primitive. Others dismissed them as lucky survivors hidden behind distance and obscurity. Even the emperor himself leaned back upon his obsidian throne, his golden armor reflecting the glow of 1,000 holographic star maps. His expression never changed. Calm. Certain. Untouchable. Every empire begins with myths, he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. And every myth ends beneath our banners. No one challenged him. Far beyond the glittering capital, however, silence answered where arrogance could not. On forgotten listening posts positioned near the Sol system, alien observers quietly erased centuries of surveillance records before abandoning their stations without explanation. Merchant guilds altered ancient trade routes overnight, refusing profitable contracts that brought them anywhere near human territory. Independent explorers suddenly declined missions leading toward Earth's sector, inventing excuses they themselves barely believed. Something invisible rippled through the galaxy, not panic, but instinct. The kind of instinct prey develops long before recognizing the predator hiding in the grass. Yet pride has always been deaf. When the Imperial Armada finally assembled, space itself seemed to tremble beneath its impossible scale. Tens of thousands of warships ignited their quantum drives in perfect synchronization, filling the darkness with rivers of blue-white fire. The formation stretched for millions of kilometers, an unstoppable wall of steel advancing toward a single insignificant star system labeled Sol. Officers celebrated before the campaign had even begun. Victory ceremonies were already being planned. Historians prepared speeches describing humanity's inevitable submission. But somewhere beyond the edge of imperial censors, beneath the calm light of a small yellow star, someone was already watching them arrive. And for the first time in generations, the ancient warning no longer sounded like a legend. It sounded like a countdown. Commander Elena Reyes stood motionless on the command deck of Earth's flagship Resolute, her hands resting lightly against the polished edge of the tactical console as countless stars drifted beyond the reinforced observation glass. Then the stars began to disappear. One by one, tiny points of light vanished behind the approaching silhouettes of Varkal warships until the darkness itself seemed alive. It wasn't a fleet. It was a moving horizon of metal, stretching farther than the eye could follow. Every vessel radiated cold precision, their immense hulls illuminated by crimson engine flares that painted the emptiness of space like fresh wounds. Around her, the bridge remained eerily calm. No shouting. No panic. Only the quiet rhythm of trained professionals carrying out procedures they had rehearsed for generations. Holographic displays floated in the air, projecting streams of tactical data while artificial intelligence systems whispered calculations almost too fast for human ears to follow. The atmosphere smelled faintly of ozone, warm circuitry, and recycled air, a familiar scent that reminded Elena she was exactly where history expected her to be. She had dreamed of this day since childhood. Not because she wanted war. Because every generation before hers believed it would eventually come. Earth's First Contact initiative had never been built on fantasy or optimism. The politicians smiled before cameras and spoke about diplomacy, exploration, and cooperation among the stars. Schools taught children about unity and peaceful discovery. Civilian ships carried ambassadors, scientists, and engineers across nearby systems. To the outside galaxy, humanity appeared hopeful, almost naive. But beneath that hopeful exterior existed another Earth, one hidden beneath mountains, oceans, deserts, and even cities themselves. Underground manufacturing complexes stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath continental plates. Automated factories slept silently beneath the ice of Antarctica. Massive shipyards orbited inside hollowed-out asteroids, concealed by sophisticated cloaking fields that made them appear as lifeless rocks. Every mining colony doubled as a fortress. Every cargo vessel carried compartments that could be transformed into weapons platforms within hours. Humanity had not prepared for conquest. Humanity had prepared for survival. Elena remembered her father telling her something when she was only 10 years old. Hope for peaceful neighbors, he had said while watching satellites cross the night sky. Asterisk, but build your home strong enough to survive the worst ones. Asterisk. Only now did she truly understand what he meant. A sharp tone echoed across the bridge. Enemy fleet entering engagement distance. The words hung in the air. No one reacted dramatically. Every officer simply acknowledged their station, their voices steady despite the impossible numbers filling every tactical screen. Thousands of enemy signatures continued multiplying until the holographic map resembled an ocean of hostile light swallowing the Sol system. Mars transmitted final civilian evacuation reports. Lunar defense platforms shifted into combat alignment. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, dormant reactor complexes awakened one after another, sending unimaginable amounts of energy through hidden military networks that had remained untouched for decades. The planet itself was waking up. Elena slowly exhaled, forcing herself to remain focused as another notification appeared before her eyes. Global Defense Protocol, Phase 1 complete. She looked once more toward Earth, suspended behind the bridge windows like a brilliant sapphire wrapped in swirling white clouds. Billions of people lived below those clouds. Families finishing dinner. Children looking curiously toward the strange lights appearing in the night sky. Scientists, artists, mechanics, teachers, ordinary people completely unaware of how carefully this moment had been prepared long before they were born. The Varkal believed they had arrived to conquer an unsuspecting civilization. They couldn't have been more wrong. Without raising her voice, Elena gave the order every commander had prayed would never become necessary. Signal every fleet. A brief silence followed. Then she finished. Humanity stands together. Across the solar system, hidden beacons ignited. Sleeping giants opened their eyes. And the greatest mobilization in human history quietly began. The invasion began without speeches, without ultimatums, without mercy. One moment, the solar system floated in an uneasy silence. The next, space erupted into blinding rivers of crimson energy as the Varkal Armada unleashed its opening barrage. The first wave struck the outer defense grid with devastating precision. Massive orbital platforms that had guarded humanity's frontier for decades vanished inside expanding spheres of white plasma, their shattered remains tumbling endlessly through the void. Shockwaves rippled across space, scattering fragments of glowing metal like embers carried by an invisible storm. On Earth, people looked up to see streaks of light crossing the heavens, beautiful from a distance, horrifying once the emergency broadcasts confirmed what they truly were. Sirens echoed through cities. Families hurried into underground shelters. High above the atmosphere, humanity's first line of defense was burning. Inside the Resolute, Commander Elena Reyes watched the casualty reports climb faster than anyone could read them. Entire squadrons disappeared from the tactical display in seconds, their blue markers blinking out one after another until sections of the holographic battlefield became hauntingly empty. Every loss carried names. Faces. Friends she had trained beside for years. Her jaw tightened, but her expression never broke. Around her, officers continued issuing calm instructions despite the chaos unfolding beyond the hull. The bridge lights dimmed as combat systems diverted additional power toward shields and engines. The deck vibrated beneath her boots each time distant impacts rattled through nearby formations. Somewhere deep inside the ship, automated repair drones were already sealing microscopic fractures caused by gravitational shockwaves. Every sound, the low hum of reactors, the quiet beeping of damaged systems, the measured voices of her crew, blended into the rhythm of a war humanity had hoped would never arrive. The Varkal advanced exactly as centuries of conquest had taught them. Their formations moved with ruthless efficiency, crushing resistance through overwhelming force before defenders had time to adapt. Entire fleets pressed forward like iron tides, each victory feeding the confidence of commanders who had never experienced defeat. Imperial broadcasts filled every civilian communication frequency, demanding immediate surrender while promising swift extermination for anyone who resisted. From the bridge of the Varkal flagship, High Marshal Kareth observed the battle with complete satisfaction. Human defensive lines collapsed sector after sector. Lunar stations fell silent. Orbital shipyards detonated in spectacular chains of fire. Everything unfolded exactly as Imperial doctrine predicted. And yet, something felt wrong. The humans were retreating. Not fleeing. Retreating. Every withdrawal happened with almost unsettling precision. Fleets abandoned strategic positions only moments before they became surrounded. Supply depots self-destructed seconds before Imperial boarding parties arrived. Defensive satellites altered enemy trajectories just long enough to slow the invasion before sacrificing themselves. Nothing appeared desperate. Nothing looked accidental. It was as though someone had already calculated every loss and accepted it long before the first shot had been fired. Marshal Kareth frowned. "Increase pursuit," he ordered. "They're breaking." But one of his senior analysts hesitated before responding. "My lord, they're leaving behind almost no recoverable technology." Kareth barely acknowledged the observation. Victory made commanders impatient. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Elena silently watched a different battlefield entirely. Hidden beneath the visible combat map, encrypted layers of information unfolded across classified displays. Every retreat was directing the Varkal deeper into carefully selected regions of space. Every abandoned station forced enemy fleets into predictable approach vectors. Every destroyed defense platform concealed sensor arrays that continued tracking Imperial movements long after appearing inactive. Humanity was giving ground, but only the ground they had already chosen to lose. For the crew, the cost still felt unbearable. Every explosion outside the viewports carried emotional weight. Every transmission ending in static reminded them that real people were dying to buy precious minutes. Elena closed her eyes for only a heartbeat. "Hold the line," she whispered, not to the ship still fighting, but to herself. When she opened them again, another tactical alert appeared. The enemy had entered the designated corridor. Exactly where humanity wanted them. For the Varkal Empire, it looked like the beginning of Earth's collapse. For humanity, the battle had only just begun. The discovery happened by accident, an act of arrogance disguised as victory. Believing humanity was in full retreat, Varkal excavation teams descended beneath the frozen crust of Europa, Jupiter's silent moon, where long-range scans had detected an immense energy signature unlike anything in the known galaxy. Endless fields of blue-white ice stretched to every horizon, broken only by towering fissures that glowed faintly from the hidden ocean far below. The wind screamed across the frozen wasteland, carrying clouds of crystalline ice that shimmered beneath Jupiter's enormous shadow. Imperial engineers celebrated as plasma drills carved through kilometers of ancient ice, convinced they had uncovered humanity's final military bunker. Commanders imagined stockpiles of weapons, hidden fleets, perhaps even a desperate government waiting to surrender. Instead, as the last wall of ice collapsed into darkness, they found something that made every celebration die in an instant. Deep beneath Europa rested a chamber so vast it resembled the interior of a hollow planet. Towering structures of impossible geometry rose from the frozen floor, their metallic surfaces flowing like liquid despite being untouched for millions of years. Endless rings rotated silently around a central sphere suspended in midair without visible support, glowing with soft pulses of silver light that rippled outward like a heartbeat. Strange symbols shimmered across its surface, changing faster than any translator could process them. Nothing resembled known engineering. Nothing matched the architecture of any civilization recorded in galactic history. Even the Varkal scientists, masters of advanced technology, stood speechless before the impossible machine. Their instruments refused to classify it. Their sensors produced contradictions that violated the laws of physics themselves. It felt less like entering a laboratory, and more like stepping inside the thoughts of a civilization so ancient that time itself had forgotten its name. Then the recordings began to play. Ancient holographic echoes awakened one after another, filling the chamber with ghostly projections of beings unlike any species alive today. Their voices carried through the immense cavern, translated automatically into every known language as though the machine had been waiting for visitors. The message was astonishingly simple. This was not a weapon. It was an archive, an engine created by a civilization that had understood a terrifying truth about intelligent life. Survival did not belong to the strongest species. It belonged to the fastest learners. The archive engine could absorb every battle, every mistake, every discovery, and distribute that knowledge instantly among those linked to it. Every defeat became a lesson. Every sacrifice became experience shared by millions. Every enemy strategy ceased to be effective the moment it succeeded once. Suddenly, scattered reports from the battlefield began to make horrifying sense. Human pilots who survived impossible dogfights returned knowing exactly how to defeat the same fighters hours later. Engineers repaired alien weapon systems they had never encountered before. Ground forces adapted to unfamiliar tactics with frightening speed, as though entire armies possessed decades of combat experience overnight. The Empire had mistaken this for remarkable discipline. It wasn't discipline. It was evolution occurring in real time. Panic quietly spread through the Varkal command network. Scientists urgently transmitted encrypted findings to High Marshal Kareth aboard the Imperial flagship. Every report reached the same impossible conclusion. The longer the war continued, the stronger humanity became. Every victory the Empire celebrated had unknowingly strengthened the enemy. Every destroyed city, every lost fleet, every fallen soldier had added another layer of experience to a civilization capable of learning collectively. Humanity wasn't merely surviving the invasion. Humanity was studying it. Marshal Kareth stared silently at the incoming data, his confidence evaporating with every page. For the first time in his undefeated military career, he remembered the ancient warning the refugees had spoken before the campaign began. Asterisk, do not corner the humans. Asterisk. Until this moment, he had believed those words described human aggression. Now he understood their true meaning. The danger had never been humanity's weapons. The danger was humanity itself. The moment arrived without fanfare. There was no triumphant speech, no desperate rallying cry echoing across humanity's fleets. There was only a single encrypted transmission that spread through every ship, every bunker, every defense station still standing. One sentence. Execute Phase 9. Across the solar system, thousands of commanders acknowledged the order in silence. Deep within hidden shipyards, armored blast doors opened for the first time in decades. Sleeper fleets emerged from the darkness of hollow asteroids, their hulls still scarred from ancient training exercises, their reactors awakening with a low, thunderous vibration that seemed to shake space itself. Beneath Earth's oceans, colossal launch silos split apart, releasing autonomous carrier platforms that rose through towering walls of water before accelerating into orbit. Humanity was no longer reacting to the invasion. Humanity was finally revealing the war it had spent generations preparing to fight. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, illuminated by the shifting blue glow of tactical displays. The battlefield surrounding Earth no longer resembled chaos. It had become a living equation. Every enemy maneuver flowed into predictive models generated by the archive engine. Every Imperial formation appeared seconds before it formed. Every firing solution was calculated before Varkal weapons even powered up. Around her, pilots received combat updates directly through neural interfaces, absorbing battlefield experience collected from millions of soldiers across every front. A rookie flying his first mission suddenly possessed the instincts of veterans who had survived hundreds of engagements. Engineers repairing damaged cruisers instantly understood alien circuitry they had never seen before. Medical teams developed treatments for unknown biological weapons within minutes instead of months. Humanity wasn't simply sharing information anymore. Humanity had become one endlessly adapting mind spread across billions of individuals. The Varkal noticed the change almost immediately. Their opening attacks failed. Interceptor squadrons that had dominated the skies only hours earlier flew directly into perfectly timed ambushes. Missile barrages curved harmlessly away as human defense grids anticipated every trajectory. Boarding parties breached abandoned corridors only to discover entire sections of ships had reconfigured themselves into elaborate traps designed specifically for Varkal physiology. Imperial officers shouted contradictory orders as formations collapsed into confusion. Strategies refined through centuries of conquest suddenly became useless after being employed only once. It felt impossible. Every lesson the Empire taught humanity returned against them moments later, improved, refined, and devastatingly effective. Then Elena saw her opportunity. The Imperial flagship. A fortress nearly 50 kilometers long. Protected by overlapping shield arrays, escort cruisers, and enough firepower to erase continents. Every military simulation declared a direct assault impossible. The archive engine disagreed. Without hesitation, Elena ordered the Resolute forward. Warning alarms erupted across the bridge as enemy batteries locked onto the flagship. Massive beams of crimson energy tore through surrounding space, vaporizing escort vessels that sacrificed themselves to keep the Resolute alive. Hull plating buckled. Internal explosions shook the ship from bow to stern. Emergency lights bathed every corridor in flashing red as automated systems fought desperately to contain cascading damage. Crew members were thrown from their stations, yet not one abandoned their post. Every second they survived brought the flagship closer. Elena never looked away. All remaining power, she whispered. Forward engines. The Resolute surged ahead like a spear forged from fire. Moments later, it pierced the heart of the Imperial command vessel. The collision unleashed a blinding eruption of light that swallowed both ships in a storm of molten steel, shattered armor, and collapsing shield energy. Across the battlefield, every Varkal command channel went silent. Fleet coordination vanished instantly. Admirals lost contact with one another. Formations dissolved into panic as thousands of warships struggled to function without centralized control. Human forces did not hesitate. They advanced through the burning debris with relentless precision, surrounding isolated enemy fleets one by one. What had begun as an invasion became a rout. The once invincible empire watched its greatest armada collapse beneath an opponent it had dismissed as primitive only days before. From the bridge of a surviving human cruiser, officers stared silently at the expanding cloud where the Resolute had vanished. Commander Elena Reyes was gone. But her sacrifice had achieved exactly what humanity needed. The Empire had come believing strength alone decided history. Instead, they discovered a truth that echoed across the stars long after the battle ended. A species willing to learn, and willing to sacrifice for one another, cannot be conquered. The war ended as suddenly as it had begun. The thunder of orbital bombardments faded into silence, replaced by drifting graveyards of shattered warships that glimmered beneath distant suns. Across the solar system, emergency beacons flashed through the darkness, guiding rescue crews toward escape pods and crippled vessels still carrying survivors from both sides. Earth's skies, once scarred by fire, slowly returned to their familiar shades of blue. Cities emerged from underground shelters, their skylines damaged but standing. Children looked upward, searching for stars that no longer seemed so distant. Humanity had survived, but the cost lingered in every empty chair, every memorial wall, every family waiting for someone who would never return. Victory did not erase grief. It simply gave grief a future worth protecting. Weeks later, beneath the towering crystal dome of the Galactic Assembly, thousands of representatives gathered in complete silence. The chamber had witnessed the rise and fall of empires for millennia. Conquerors had entered through its towering gates wearing crowns of victory. Defeated civilizations had pleaded for mercy beneath its endless ceiling of artificial stars. But never before had the assembly witnessed something like this. The massive bronze doors opened slowly, revealing not an army, not an emperor, but the surviving delegation of the Varkal Empire. Their ceremonial armor was cracked. Their proud banners hung torn and faded. Even their footsteps lacked the confidence that had once echoed through the chamber. Every eye followed them as they approached the central podium where emperors traditionally celebrated conquest. Instead, the High Marshal lowered his head. For several long seconds, no one spoke. When he finally raised his eyes, there was no pride left in them, only the heavy burden of experience. "We ignored the warning," he said quietly, his voice carrying effortlessly across the silent hall. "We believed humanity's compassion was weakness. We believed their diplomacy meant fear. We believed their restraint proved they lacked the will to fight." He paused, as though reliving every terrible moment of the campaign. "We were wrong." The chamber remained utterly still. Then came the words that would be recorded in every language across the known galaxy. "Do not mistake humanity's kindness for harmlessness. They will share knowledge before they share threats. They will offer peace before they prepare weapons. They will rescue strangers who once called them enemies. But if you force them to defend those they love..." His voice faltered for the first time. "They will adapt faster than your armies can think. Every attack will strengthen them. Every sacrifice will unite them. And by the time you understand your mistake, it will already be too late." Silence answered him. Not fearful silence. Respectful silence. Across the assembly, military advisors quietly erased invasion proposals targeting Earth. Admirals cancelled fleet mobilizations that had been planned for decades. Ancient civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as inexperienced suddenly requested diplomatic envoys instead of reconnaissance missions. Historians rewrote textbooks. Strategic academies replaced centuries of military doctrine with a single case study labeled simply, "The Soul Campaign." Meanwhile, back on Earth, there were no victory parades celebrating domination. Commander Elena Reyes' name was engraved onto a quiet memorial overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where waves rolled endlessly beneath an open sky. Veterans stood beside schoolchildren who had never known war, sharing stories not about destroying an enemy, but about protecting a home. The wreckage orbiting Earth was carefully salvaged, and even surviving Varkal prisoners were given food, medical care, and the chance to return home. Humanity claimed no conquered worlds. They demanded no tribute. They built no empire from the ashes of victory. Because they had never fought for power. They had fought so that one small blue world could remain free. Years later, whenever young explorers asked why no fleet ever threatened Earth again, the oldest travelers would simply smile before looking toward the distant Sol system. Some civilizations earn peace through fear, they would say. But humanity earned it by proving that the strongest force in the galaxy was never their weapons. It was their unwavering choice to stand together, even when the entire universe stood against them.